Hello everyone, it's Elizabeth again, and today's episode is going to focus on the Messengers, and they are the main antagonists in the Thea's Tapestry Alliance throughout the entire series. So you have Mongoose, who's the leader. She has basically engineered a way to cheat death. So as we spoke about in our previous videos, the majority of the action takes place in the afterlife. So the logical problem with all of this is if you can live forever in this world indefinitely, and ultimately the goal of this world is to learn what you need to go and ascend to the third world, what happens if you're afraid of death? What happens if you have nothing to live for? And what happens ultimately when you're afraid of the end? So Mongoose was a very interesting character. That her original name is Margaret. She sees herself as a messenger of the high gods, and this ties into angelology. So you have it where the creator god existed, then they have the archangels. So we're very familiar with Michael, the archangel of war and military combat. A lot of people name their kids Mike or Michael in honor of him. You have Raphael, who is the healer of the worlds, and that's where our character Hattori gets his adopted name, Raphael, because the ability to heal is very pivotal in that angel's role. He also appears in the Book of Tobias and several other passages of the Old Testament. And then you finally have the angel Gabriel, whose name is that of the messenger, so the deliverer between God, the Virgin Mary, and the overall Holy Family. So he also delivers messages to Joseph, delivers as an intermediary between the two worlds. So Hansaku, who is given the Gabriel title in a symbolic kind of way, is Mongoose basically fan fictioning, cosplaying, mocking the intermediate relationship between God and humanity. So she is basically taking the aspects of theology and politicizing them to justify her being afraid to pass on to the third world. So an interesting thing comes into play where theology has been politicized. Most people, when they say I'm spiritual but not religious, what they actually have a grievance with is how religion is being politicized. So theocracy, when you take it, theo means God, and the C-R-A-C-Y part, that is the politicization of it. So it's when you take your government and you fuse them in with the religious system, and that's where corruption and the decay rots from the inside out. That's what most people have grievances with. Theology, where it has theo in the front and then it has L-O-G-Y, that's the logic standpoint and the study of. You also have the same thing with biology as well, when the breakdown for Latin. It's the study of God and the exploration of God. So most people actually love theology, but they hate theocracy, and I feel the same way. Theocracy is being used to hurt many people internationally and is actually breaking the second commandment. I'm the Lord your God, and you shall not use my name in vain. It's using God as a excuse for your unacceptable behavior or your inability to accept your mortality. So going back to Mongoose, you have Margaret's character, who was raised in a very sheltered environment with her mother. Her father proceeded to be against allowing his daughter to grow up. She grew up in an all-white, isolated environment, also within the eugenics movement in the United States in the 1920s and 30s. So she lived her life completely indoors, and when she was suffering from childhood cancer, like her mother, she was developing cancer, and there was a big debate on whether euthanizing or potentially having the person die on their own terms within their own home during this time period, because cancer wasn't heavily researched. It was considered a curse, and it became a debate between, should we let nature take its course, let them go to God naturally, or should we artificially try to freeze the clock by unaliving them or potentially hyperextending their life through artificial means. So Mongoose's father takes matters into his own hands and actually taxidermies, which is turning a corpse or an object, like a little animal, into a doll, and does that both to his wife and his own daughter. So as a result, this builds really into Mongoose's philosophy. She comes and enters in this world as a healer because she is truly innocent. However, what is it like to be raised in that hate-filled environment, that sheltered environment? that is contingent on cannibalizing itself, because a lot of the eugenics movement was based on the white supremacy movements, some of which have roots still in the United States, which is pretty horrifying within itself. But the idea that this hatred festered like a tumor, both literally and physically, and manifested in different ways. So if you have a culture that's based on conquest, abuse, manipulation, and control, what happens if you cannot control or conquer somebody else? You start cannibalizing yourself. So in this way, Mongoose is a rather tragic figure. However, she's found glory in this new world. So the second world is cruel, but it's fair, and she sees the mechanics and how this world works. So she rationalizes to herself, oh, well, I was cheated of a life. I don't want to leave. I now am given this godlike power and ability, and now since I can control and have control in my life, I don't want to leave. So how do I artificially hyperextend my life so I never have to grow up? So her set soul type is a healer. She's locked in at age 12. But as a result, she's extremely volatile, emotionally immature, and she's just parroting these aspects of theocracy heard by both her father, her mother, and the eugenics movement that was the network that kept her alive while she was inside the house down in the South during this time. So we see all those things congeal together. So she has no respect for humanity, no respect for other people's agency or free will, and sees them as dolls, the same way her father viewed her and her mother. So basically the cycle continues of abuse. So it is tragic, however, it isn't justified. So she basically learns how to amplify the vices that are within people, within the void. She sets up a series of death competitions. So in the first chapter of Red Thread, you see the aftermath of the first Tower of Babel. And if people who study the Bible, they know the Tower of Babel story, where humanity was arrogant, they tried to build a tower to God, and according to the mythos, they have it where we were able to break upon ourselves because languages were introduced, we weren't able to hear each other. And I think it's not a technical show of arrogance, but I think it's a metaphorical way to explain that language is the way we communicate and link to each other. However, it can be used as a mechanic against each other. If we focus too much on our differences, we can't collaborate and build something beautiful. And if we do collaborate, we shouldn't try to be God or be something higher. We should work together as creatures. And the interesting thing is Kiwibunny is called the Anti-Babel Project because it focuses on those two mechanics, because Kiwibunny is a language translator, but also a therapy animal. As a result, you have